We are continuing on Mesechet Avodah Zarah, and we are on Daf Samech Gimal Amud Aleph, the top of the Amud. We're going to go back to the last line of Samech Gimel Amud Aleph. Today's Amud is being learned L'Zchut Refuah Shelema of Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, that should have full recovery. Refuah Shelema Bezrat Hashem. We started a Braita from which Rab Sheshet asked a question. Omer Adam lechamarav ulpoalav lechu veichlu bedinar ze seu shtu bedinar ze ve'eno choshesh. You could give money to your workers to go get food for themselves, even though that the food they are going to get is not necessarily going to be kosher. They're going to get maybe yain nesech. They're maybe going to buy some products of Shvi'it, all of which they're buying from a Jewish, not completely religious vendor. And that's not on you, because you gave them the money. It's their money. They do what they want with it. You're now liable for that. But at the same time, the chidush of this Tosefta comes in the next line, that lo choshesh, in the case that he gave the money, you're not concerned, lo mishum shvid, lo mishum maaser, lo mishum yain nesech, but the chidush is, im amar lahem tzeu yichlu v'ani poreya. If you said, you go eat, and on me I'll pay the vendor. I will pay the storekeeper. In that case, says the Braita, says the Tosefta, choshesh mishum shvi'it, mishum maaser, mishum yain nesech. You have to be concerned about all of those items. Maybe he's going to have maaser, something that's tevel, that's not properly tied, something that's shvi'it, or something that could be a question of yain nesech. So says the Gemara, Alma ki kapara, the me'isur kapara. You see from here that when you paid the money, that which was shvi'it is going to be now tofes, is going to take over the status of the money that you will give, and therefore now you are machshil, you are putting a stumbling block in front of the storekeeper, because the money that you give him right now, instead of the shvi'it that he had, so he gave fruits of shvi'it to the workers, now you are a day later paying him money. That money now takes the status of fruits of shvi'it, because it's considered an exchange of shvi'it. We already mentioned that shvi'it is tofes tamea. Shvi'it takes over the status of its money that is exchanged with, and says the Gemara, so now you are paying money of shvi'it to a Jew that's not necessarily very careful, and you are putting stumbling block in front of him. So what do you see at the end of the day, says Rab Sheshet from this Braita, from this Tosefta, that even though that at the time that you take the cash out of your wallet and you give it to the storekeeper, where is the food of Shvi'it? Where is the fruits of Shvi'it? Nowhere to be found. It's eaten yesterday. It's gone. And yet, even though that the fruits of Shvi'it is gone, we mention that the money that you pay now, where the fruits are not in the world anymore, still becomes kadosh. This stands in sharp contrast with the entire thing that we were mentioning yesterday, because we wanted to say that the Beya Rabbi Yanai, the Yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai, who were tremendous tzaddikim, very altruistic, righteous individuals, they wanted to support the Aniyim by borrowing fruits of Shvi'it and paying back the debt in the 8th year, thinking that when you pay in the 8th year, where the fruits of the 7th year are no longer in existence because they were consumed, that does not take the halacha of Shvi'it, so it's not bound by Shat Biur. That's the whole chiddush. And we got into the whole etnan thing, right? The payment of a zonah, that we said if the biyah, it's not there anymore, and then you pay the etnan, it's not going to be asur. Remember, the whole Amud yesterday was Geboit, was built on top of this concept. And says Rav Shad, you missed the Tosefta. Here you have a Tosefta that indicates that even if after eating Shvi'it you pay for it, still a problem. So says the Gemara, now we have to get around this. Alma ki kapara de isur para. You see from here that when you pay, regardless of whether or not the fruits of Shvi'it are in existence, you are paying the Shvi'it. You are paying something that takes the Kedusha of Shvi'it. Hachanami ki kapara de isura kapara. Over here also, when you pay for etnan zona, for the prostitution that he used, or for the case of Rabbi Yanai by Shvi'it, supporting the Aniyim, the Meisura Kapara, you're paying a debt, even though that the thing itself is no longer in existence. When you pay for it, it becomes Asur, it takes its halachot upon it. So says the Gemara, Tirgema Rab Chisda bechenvani makifo. There's a complicated sugya, but for our purposes, very simplified way, it's not so complicated. Says the Gemara, this is talking about a relationship business. That means if me and you are in business together for 20 years, you know me, I know you, you trust me, I trust you. So therefore, if I didn't trust somebody, would I give them on credit? No. Even if you trust someone a little bit, you give a little bit credit, you have your ceiling of how much credit you're willing to give to a stranger. But when you know somebody, you have an ongoing relationship of business, right, in good faith, then you give on credit because you know that you're going to get paid. And it's not only from the side of the chenvani, the side of the seller, but even in the side of the buyer, you know that you're going to pay him. It's just a matter of circulating the money at some point, right? When you have such strong business relationship, when the chenvani is giving the sandwich to my worker, he is thinking as if the money from my pocket is already in his cashier's box, He already sees it there. And not only that, because I always give and he always lends, halacha also looks at it that the money in my wallet, it's as though it's already sitting in his cashier. And therefore, when my worker is eating the sandwich of Shvi'it in his store, it's as if that moment I already paid him. Even though that in reality I didn't pay yet, but because it is such a strong relationship, it's as if the money, the ownership already has been transferred. The halacha looks at it like that. I have a debt to him which is so real that takes over the status of the money that's sitting in my pocket, right? Well, again, this, if you want to surgically examine this with the halachic eye, there's a lot to be talked about in terms of berera, yesh berera, em berera. There's a lot to talk about, right? But that's basically the concept. So says the Gemara, that's what we're talking about. You know why it's a problem? Even though that you're paying it after it's already digested in their stomach, the day after? Because it doesn't become asur now, it became asur already yesterday when they were eating it, because I have this ongoing relationship of credit with this storekeeper. Says the Gemara, the kevan de urcher la kufi, because he always sells on credit, kanile dinar gabe, the kinyan happens at the moment that the workers are eating, right there and then. So says the Gemara, aval chenvani she'en makifo mai mutar. Why says, wait a second. You're suggesting that a chenvani, a storekeeper that doesn't have that relationship of trust with him, is going to be mutar? Ihaki, if that's correct, you should have said the Tosefta a little bit differently. Why? Listen to this well. Always the Mishnayot and all of the Tanaic works, Tosefta included, they will tell you the greatest chidush that they could say with the least words. That's how it always is. So if I could tell you a halacha within the same case, which would be the bigger chidush, I always would do that. And if that is correct, which we just said, then the Braita should have said, the Tosefta should have said a completely different case. You know what the Tosefta should have said? The Tosefta should have said within the same case of chenvani, that you sent your workers and they ate over there and then you're going to pay tomorrow. Within the same scenario, you see the same video. The workers go there, buy a sandwich, they eat it, and their boss is going to pay tomorrow. Within the same scenario could be one case that's asur, one case that's mutar. It all depends on the relationship of the boss with the chenvani, with the storekeeper. And that would have been the best chidush to tell me. Why do you have to tell me that if I pay my workers cash and say, okay, this is money, go buy, that's mutar, chazak u'baruch. That's pashut, that's mutar. You should have told me that even within the same case of the chenvani could be mutar. If you go to a store that your boss doesn't have much of a relationship with, it should be mutar. Even if he's paying for it tomorrow. Regardless of me paying cash to my workers to go buy lunch. Right? So says the Gemara, Ihachi, instead of telling me the case of leniency, that's mutar, in scenario in which you paid cash to your workers prior to them going to the restaurant, you should have said the same case as the Seifa of the Braita. What is the case of Isur? When is it Asur? When you send them to Chenvani and then you pay tomorrow. Only Bechenvani Amakifo, only in a storekeeper who you have a relationship with as the worker's boss, then he always gives you on credit. That's when it's Asur. Because it's as if the mishtabedle, because you have a shibud. As soon as he hands the sandwich to my worker, it's as if the money is transferred from my pocket into his account. But a chenvani, a storekeeper that you don't have a close relationship with, and he wouldn't give you on credit in a regular sense, then it's mutar. Then it would be mutar. And furthermore, even logically, this should not make sense, because chenvani she'en makifo milo mishtabit. Halachically speaking, so who cares if I'm not close with the storekeeper? Whenever you give something to me based on my command, in other words, if I send my workers to you and I tell you, please give a sandwich to my worker and I will pay. What am I being, halachically speaking, at that moment? Guarantor. I'm a guarantor. I'm an arev. An arev, all of his nechasim becomes meshubad. There is shibud at that moment. You are putting yourself on a hook for this debt that just happened, for him giving a sandwich to my workers based on my words. I said you should give it, so I'm on the hook, and all my nechasim, of course there is shibud. So says the Gemara, V'hama Rava, we know the halacha of Rava. Ha'omer lechaverom, someone that tells his friend, 10 maneh lifloni, please give $100 to so-and-so, give $100 to the third party, Ve'yiknu kol nechasai lach, and I am a guarantor. My nechasim would be the guarantor. My assets are the backing of this debt that I am creating right now. So even though that I didn't borrow a penny from you, I told you to give it to Reuben. But I told it to you, and I am putting myself on the hook. Kana, he is going to be koneh. In other words, the lender, the one that's giving the maneh to the third party, now he owns some 100 zuz worth of your nechasim. At that moment, the moment he hands the maneh to Reuben, he now owns in your nechasim, in your assets, 100. So that's shibud. Last time I checked, says the Gemara. Well, what is that? That's not shibud? Of course that's shibud. And that's exactly what's happening. You're telling the owner of the store, give a sandwich to my worker and I'll pay. That's exactly like the case of Rabbah. So says the Gemara. Kana midin arev. The lender is koreh 100 from the halachot of arif, because you are a guarantor. So therefore that doesn't work. This whole thing that we spoke for past 15 lines, it's not going to be viable. So we have to refine the answer. Amarava. Doesn't make a difference if you have a strong relationship with the restaurant keeper, you don't have with the owner of restaurant it doesn't make a difference. Even though that you are on a hook, you are responsible for paying the debt that they created by eating a sandwich there. Because it's not miuchad, it's not specific. The shibud is not going to be asur. It's not going to be asur. So says the Gemara. So therefore, if you say that, why are you concerned about Shvi'it now? In other words, in both cases, whether I'm best friends with the owner of this restaurant or I don't know him, it's the first time, because I did not have a bag of ma'ot to say, this ma'ot is going to be the payment, I'll bring it to him tomorrow. Because I was in meyachet, it's not asur. So it says the Gemara, okay, fine. So if you're saying there's no difference between someone that I know and someone that I don't know, so why is it asur when the people go there and eat? Well, you said don't forget the Tosefta. Tosefta said, if I pay cash to my workers and they go and eat, that's mutar. If I don't pay them cash, I say, go eat and I'll pay, that's asur. Right? Why is it asur? If there's no shibud, because I didn't specify a bag of money for it, so why in the world would it be asur? Says the Gemara like this. Amara Papa, Kegon sheikdim lo dinar. We're talking about the case that you prepaid. You went to the restaurant, you went to the McDonald's, right? And you said, here is $1,000. My workers are going to come every day and have some sandwiches, right? So I already paid. So when does the owner of the restaurant own my money? When they're eating the sandwich. Every day when they come and eat the sandwich, he owns another, what's the price? $1.99. Another, he has now another piece of my money that becomes his, right? Now, therefore, at the time that they eat it, my money is exchanged with shvit. So if they are munching on a shvit sandwich, the money that I gave already at that moment becomes a tmura, a payment for that, and it takes on the halachot of shvi'it. And if the owner of the store is a non-from Jew, then I am putting a stumbling block in front of him, because at that moment it became temurah of shvi'it. Now, so in other words, it works with everything that we said before, right? It works with the fact that it's non-zonah. If you don't give it at a time, it's mutar for her to bring it as a korban. And the Beit Rabbi Yanai, the yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai, who wanted to support the aniyim because they were not doing it at the same time, is mutar. So why is this one asur? Because it's not later on. We're talking about the case that you prepaid. So therefore, whenever they take a sandwich, at that moment, the payment of the sandwich becomes shvit, right? If a sandwich is shvit. So that's why it's asur. So says the Gemara, Amale, Ihachi adatani seu veichlu. The Gemara has a technical problem with it, because the language does not fully match. What was the language of Tosefta? The boss tells the workers, Seu, go out, eat, v'ani porea, and I will pay. Right? You go eat now, present tense, I will pay in future. That's the language. Grammatically incorrect if I already prepaid. Because if the case is that I prepaid, meaning in technicalities of halakha, it works. But the language doesn't sit well, because it says over here, Seu ushtu v'ani porea, seu veichlu, seu ushtu v'ani mechashev mibaile. It should say, I will do the accounting based on what I paid. Not that I will pay. I paid already. What do you mean? It's a prepaid thing. Amaleh, he says, no problem. That's not a problem. That's cosmetics. Amaleh tniseu v'ani mechashev. The right girsa is seu v'ani mechashev. No problem. I'm not going to sweat that, says the Gemara. Rav Ashi Amar. Rav Ashi says, okay, that's one answer. So we have already one good answer. Rav Ashi says, we're going to have another answer also. Kegon shenatal v'natan beyad. We're talking about the case that he took natal v'natan beyad. That he took it and he gave it actually, which is, again, in that case, it will actually create a shibud right there and then, and that's why it's asur. Amaleh, Rabbi Yemar, Rav Ashi. Rabbi Yemar said to Rav Ashi, wait a second. Ihaki adatali seu veichlu seu ushtu, telu veichlu, telu ushtu mi baile. If you delivered it, in other words, you didn't tell them to go, but you actually brought it to them, you brought lunch to your workers, what do you mean, go out and eat? You're not going out anywhere. I brought the food to you. And that's why it's asur. So don't say shseu, it has to be pick up. Yeah, here it is, the food, the sandwiches, pick up and eat. So it doesn't really fit the language again. Amaleh, teni telu, veichlu, telu shtu. Again, the Gemara does some surgical amendments to the language of the Tosefta, and we have two solid answers for this. And again, well, before we go on, now we are back to the status quo of the answers that we gave. So far, if you have Shvi'it, if you have Etnan Zonah, if you have all those things, if it's at the time when they exist still in the world, and you make the payment, or if the payment was set from before that this is the tle that I'm going to pay, right, even until 3 years, that's when it takes its damim and becomes asur. But if you did it after the consumption, that would be mutar. Now the Gemara is going to go through a number of case studies that the Gemara asks good questions, right? The quandaries that they were discussing in the Gemara, in the Bet Midrash, in the time of the Gemara, and the Gemara is going to answer them, about 3 of them in the next daf, which Bezrat Hashem will discuss in the days to come.